very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. The dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweigh the dangers which are cited to justify it.
I am a lifelong Democrat whose family has had 80 years of deep engagement with America's public health bureaucracy and long friendships with key federal regulators, including Anthony Fauci, Francis Collins, and Robert Gallo. Members of my family wrote many of the statutes under which these men govern. They nurtured the growth of equitable and effective public health policies and defended that regulatory bulwark against ferocious attacks funded by industry. I built my own alliances with these individuals and their agencies during my years of environmental and public health advocacy. But I also watched how the industry, supposedly being regulated, used its indentured servants on Capitol Hill and its financial clout to systematically hollow out those agencies beginning in the 1980s, disabling their regulatory function and transforming them into sock puppets for the very industry Congress charged them with regulating. I've come here today to announce my candidacy for the Democratic nomination for President of the United States. I'm here to declare myself an independent candidate for President of the United States. To declare our independence from the tyranny of corruption. In my heart, I no longer believe that I have a realistic path to electoral victory. It's with a sense of victory and not defeat that I'm suspending my campaign activities.
He is a great person. I've known him for so long. For the past 16 months, Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
Don't you want a safe environment for your children?
You're asking me, Senator, you're asking me not to sue vaccine pharmaceutical companies. Yeah, you are. That's exactly what you're doing. The only thing I want is good science, and that's it.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has been confirmed as Secretary of Health and Human Services.
Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is facing mounting pressure to step down.
Sir, you're a charlatan. That's what you are.
You're putting America's babies' health at risk, America's seniors' health at risk, all Americans' health at risk, and you should resign.
Counterpoint, you roadkill munching, red-eyed human Slim Jim.
You.
They say his leadership has, quote, put the health of all Americans at risk.
It was during COVID when I realized that the mainstream media is just lying to Americans. It was through that experience, as well as the character assassination I saw every day in the press of Bobby Kennedy, that I knew that you couldn't trust what you read. They write headlines that are clickbait, and it was very clear that the mainstream media is bought. If you look back at Bobby Kennedy's career, he has spent his entire career protecting people, protecting the environment. From the lawsuits he's filed, he's the founder of Waterkeeper Alliance. Everything he's done is for public service and for the betterment of human health and the environment. It was also based out of just frustration that we knew what needed to get done and it just wasn't getting done. He is the man to make that happen. He is such an honest, trustworthy person who lets the day come to him. He wakes up and he's ready for service. He just is so open and he never complains and is always, hardworking and ready for what comes his way. From the decades of relentless work that he did, the moment of Make America Healthy Again, it was a culmination of everything he had done. It is truly a movement that he sparked.
There were 11 siblings in my family, and I had something like on both sides of the family, almost 70 first cousins. And I never knew anybody with autism. I never knew anybody with a food allergy. I never knew anybody with diabetes. There was one person in my school of, 800 or 900 people who had diabetes. When my uncle was president, we spent 0 on chronic disease. The rate of chronic disease was about 11%, and it was 3% in 1950. And today it's 60%, even more. You have 8 out of 10 American kids cannot qualify for military service. Fertility issues are, insane. American teens today have half the sperm count and half the testosterone as 65-year-old men. Our girls are hitting puberty 6 years early. I saw all this happening, and I walked through an airport, I walked down the street, and I see kids, I see them in a playground, I see them in schools, and they've all got chronic inflammation and chronic mitochondrial challenges, and you can see it on their face, the way they move their bodies. And that's not how children are supposed to look. It was shocking to me that nobody was seeming to notice this. Pediatricians, even old pediatricians who knew that something had gone terribly wrong, were not speaking out about it. Nobody was talking about it.
In 1918, John D. Rockefeller hired Abram Flexner to go out and standardize medical schools. But what he ended up doing is closing down the homeopathic medical schools, herbal medical schools, women's medical schools, most of the black medical schools, anything that was non-pharmaceutical medicine. Now, this is important. You cannot patent a naturally occurring substance. Think about it. God's creation cannot be controlled and patented. You can only patent something that is man-made. So, in pharmaceutical medicine, you cannot patent a naturally occurring hormone, for instance. So all of the birth control pills, all of the hormone replacement that's standard, has been changed just enough so it can be patented. And that means it has side effects because your body doesn't quite recognize it. But let's go back to 1918. So Flexner goes out, and they then close all those schools and sort of bring on the word quack. So that's quackery medicine. Now, that's not to say that there weren't things back then that were not so good. Coca-Cola actually contained cocaine. So there's something to be said for standardizing, but of course, it went way beyond that.
It was, I think, an important inflection point in medicine because it was the Wild West, and there needed to be some sort of a regulation because a doctor could start their own school, and some of the schools would just be 2 years in length, and there wouldn't be the quality. And so there was a problem that needed to be addressed, and it just so happened that with the Flexner Report and Carnegie and Rockefeller, they came at the right time, at the right place, but their direction, they missed the mark because they forget to take into account that the body has an integrative aspect to it. There's multiple systems that all work together synergistically. We're not just a digestive system. We're not just a central nervous system.
Western medicine is, let's find the disease in the body and burn it out, cut it out, poison it out, radiate it out. That's medicine. Oh, then when people started to die of cancer, the same people started the American Cancer Society. And I can tell you, because I've spoken there, they're never interested in cancer cures, ever. Same with the MS Society. They're not interested in people getting over MS. They're interested in how can we get you a wheelchair. The entire thing is not about getting better.
We were doing research with certain botanical substances in cancer patients, and we needed to have FDA approval for certain types of applications. Well, those were systematically taken away, and when we would go and testify to try and get them back, the panel would say, well, if a big pharmaceutical company wants to make these things, we would have no problem with it. They could make them tomorrow, or almost tomorrow. If you want them in the pharmaceutical public domain, basically, and you want to be able to access them as physicians, we are not comfortable, we, the FDA, allowing those things to be done.
And it basically did away with herbal medicine, with natural medicine. By the turn of the century, we had over 100 naturopathic, homeopathic colleges and universities teaching botanical natural medicine. They went away, fast forward to 1940, they were all gone. And it was a concerted effort by the medical establishment to go into patent medicines and petroleum-based medicines.
Remember, John D. Rockefeller, founder of Standard Oil. So all pharmaceuticals became petroleum-based drugs.
It's reported that 99% of all pharmaceutical feedstocks and reagents are derived from petroleum or petrochemicals. Drugs are made using certain building blocks, usually called feedstocks, that are somehow refined or enhanced using reagents or solvents. Let's take an off-the-shelf painkiller that almost everyone takes. The feedstocks or building blocks for aspirin are benzene and phenol. These are both petroleum byproducts and toxic byproducts, I would add. Long-term exposure to benzene damages your bone marrow. Even a naturally derived drug like antibiotics, to be mass-produced and stabilized, you typically use a precursor like aniline, which again is a petroleum product and a toxic product. And then there are your solvents and reagents, xylene, methanol, which are used to refine and extract key ingredients. But it's not just drugs they took over our food. It's often said that food is medicine, and vice versa. What you get is that all medicine for the human body, sanctioned by the government, is now a petroleum-derived product.
A lot of these additives are coming from petroleum. And the way petroleum is produced, it's inherently has toxins in it, has heavy metals in it, it has different carcinogens in it. It's one of the reasons why artificial food dyes are linked to cancer in some animal studies, because petroleum should not be consumed by humans. When I started to compare the ingredient lists of the most popular products sold here in the United States to compare to the same products sold in other countries, the ingredient lists were so different. There was more man-made chemicals, more toxic ingredients, more poisonous ingredients here in the United States, whereas in other countries, they were using more real food. And one perfect example of this was Quaker Oats. Back then, Quaker Oats had a strawberries and cream version, and here in the United States, it was artificially dyed with petroleum-based red 40 apple bits to make that strawberries and cream Quaker oatmeal. But in the UK, the strawberries and cream Quaker oatmeal had real strawberries. Kraft here in the United States had Yellow 5 and Yellow 6, both petroleum-based food dyes that require a warning label in Europe that says may cause adverse effects on activity and attention in children.
Tobacco companies bought a lot of the food companies in the 70s, including RJR Nabisco, Philip Morris Kraft. I mean, these were like tobacco food companies, right? And they use the same science, the same engineering of the products to create addiction. They have taste institutes that hire craving experts to create the bliss point of food, to create the perfect mouthfeel taste, and that lighting up of the area of the brain that is the addiction center, we call it the nucleus accumbens. And they know how to do this. They look at brain imaging, we call functional MRI, and they can actually see what's happening. They do this on little kids as young as 2 to see what images will light up their brains. So the kid, when he goes to the grocery store, his mother says, "Mommy, I want that, I want that, I want that." And that's criminal. That we target kids, that we target minorities, and this is well documented from many organizations like the Yale Food Policy Group and many others. So I think we have a crisis both in terms of chronic disease, but we also have a crisis of how the whole system is set up and funded, and the corruption and the complete takeover of the narrative around food and health by the medical and food industrial complex.
I don't know how we stand a chance as a human species when a company like PepsiCo has a robot that mimics human taste buds that they're testing their products against. How do we stand a chance against that type of technology? So this is one of the reasons you see either artificial flavor or natural flavor added to the majority of processed foods in the grocery store, because it's that flavoring component that triggers your brain into remembering that flavor and wanting to eat more of that product. And it literally takes over your taste buds and your entire olfactory system so that your brain can't stop eating and doesn't know when it's satiated, and then you end up overeating, and that's what ends up leading to these chronic diseases.
I would eat gummy bears for breakfast, I would eat McDonald's for lunch, I would eat Pizza Hut for dinner, like it was just all toxic. And after 5 years of eating that way, I ended up with a golf ball sized tumor in my lymphatic system, 3.7 centimeters, early stages of cancer. And that was my wake-up call.
So I was in and out of doctor's offices for most of my childhood, trying to treat my allergies, my eczema, my stomach issues, my asthma. And when my parents took me to the doctor's office, the doctors never asked them what I was eating or what they were feeding me. Instead, they put me on medication. And as a result, I was on several different medications as a child. Over the last 50 or so years, our food supply has been inundated with man-made chemicals that have been improved by the food industry that don't have third-party safety studies, that many of the chemicals these companies don't use in other countries, and that these chemicals are there to improve the bottom line of the food industry and not improve our health. And when I made that discovery that these additives that the food companies were using to either improve shelf life or create a certain flavor or to emulsify a product so it doesn't break down on the shelf, or artificial food dyes made from petroleum versus a dye that's made from real food.
We allow butylated hydroxytoluene, which is a preservative, in our food. Now, you wouldn't have that in your cupboard putting it on your salad. You don't even know how to pronounce it. I do because I'm a doctor, but basically that's a compound that's in almost preserved foods that we have in the country, and we know that it's carcinogenic. We have 10,000 chemicals in the food in America. There's 400 in the European Union. We could take a lesson or two from how they're doing things and what they've chosen to do. If you're a food manufacturer, you can make any compound you want, any chemical you want. You can say, well, our internal studies have shown that it's safe. We can tell the FDA, and the FDA goes, great, it's safe. And we don't have to prove it. We call it generally recognized as safe, or GRAS. Now, the whole GRAS system is screwed up, and so many compounds are recognized safe, like trans fats. Classic example. Developed in 1911, turning vegetable oil into solid fat like lard, right? So it was Crisco. It is one of the worst things that ever happened to Americans, kill hundreds of thousands of Americans a year for heart attacks or diabetes, from inflammation. And the science has been known for 50 years that this was harmful. And yet the food manufacturers, it was so ingrained in their products that they pressured the government to not rule against it. There was a lawsuit by a scientist against the FDA who'd been working on this for 50 years. He did the lawsuit in his 90s, and he finally pressured the FDA through discovery to actually rule it as a non-GRAS substance, so it's no longer recognized as safe. But this was a compound that was in the food since 1911. We have so many things like that in our food supply. We're innocent until proven guilty, fine when it comes to humans, not fine when it comes to things that are potentially harmful in our food or medication. We've seen 200% to 300% increases across the board of almost every chronic disease, from diabetes to autoimmune diseases to mental health challenges to ADD. We've seen much higher rates of autism, cancer, heart disease, you name it. 48th in life expectancy. I think Albania is higher than us, and yet we spend more than twice any other nation on healthcare. I mean, this is a travesty.
If you look at the history of Standard Oil and its business practices, the overarching theme is allow no competing standards, no competing product, no competing business, period. If you compete with Rockefeller, you are bought out or crushed. That's it. He took that same approach to medicine. First, take out all the competition. Chiropractors, natural healers, anyone with a different idea about health, no matter how long it's been around. Unless you are under the protection of the AMA and a follower of its dogma, you are out. Step 2 is you standardize the product, and this is how we get an emphasis on chemicals, specifically petroleum chemicals, in managing the human body. Not just drugs, but our food too. For the average American today, almost everything that goes into their bodies has some kind of chemical base, whether that's a precursor, a solvent, a pesticide, a fertilizer. A chemical, highly processed product is the standard. Step 3 is protection from new competition. Post-World War I, the government got a lot more powerful, especially after FDR. So if you operate in the Rockefeller mindset, that's a problem. Now, you can't crush government or take it over, but you can buy it.
The healthcare industry spends 5 times more on lobbying and public affairs work than any other industry in the country. They're the dominant spinner in Washington, D.C., and not far behind them is the food industry. So inevitably, whatever side of the aisle you're on, you're working for pharma, you're working for insurance companies, you're working for food companies. And what I learned very quickly is those industries, very mechanically, what you're doing in DC is you're funneling money to interests that Americans trust. So early on, I'm funneling money to college professors to make sure studies say the right things. I'm funneling money to politicians themselves. Pharma is the biggest political donation engine in the country. I'm funneling money to media entities. We're buying pharma ads on news channels not to impact consumers, but to actually impact the news itself. We're funneling money to civil rights groups to say that it's, socially justice, to support the causes we're trying to espouse.
Whether it's the CDC or the FDA or all the other agencies, they have been captive to the medical industry and in some cases are funded by parts of the medical industry for so long that their policies, their procedures are set up with the stated goal of public health and safety, which are great, but the actual procedural part of a lot of what they do is not aimed at public safety, it's aimed at keeping the medical system protected.
Even big tech has not been able to escape the octopus that is medical industry money. Google basically is now a pharma and healthcare company. 40% of their parent company holdings are health-related. Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, Novartis, all partners of Google. And that's not counting the enormous amounts of ad dollars for pharma and medical care that goes through Google Ads.
So in 2020, Bobby Kennedy released his book, The Real Anthony Fauci. During 2021, it sold 1 million copies. It was on the New York Times bestseller list for 16 or 17 weeks. And still to this day, there's not been a single major media review of that book. In 2021, I did the documentary of that book. And I remember when we were working on it, I had an off-site editor in LA who texted me that he had finished a 10-minute section and he had put it on his password-protected private YouTube page. And I was driving, and so by the time I got home, clicked the link to go look at it, and YouTube had taken it down for violating their content policies. And this was on a private password-protected page. And just from the algorithm picking up Bobby Kennedy's face, boom, he was off. I used to spend $100,000 a month on Facebook ads for my films. Facebook barred us, wouldn't take our ads. I couldn't run any ads on Google. When we released that film, The Real Anthony Fauci, if people tried to spread it on Facebook, they'd post a trailer for it and get no clicks, no likes, no nothing. They completely shut us down. I couldn't give Facebook money. I couldn't run ads on YouTube. My Vimeo account, they contacted us and said, we've got vaccine misinformation in your storage and you've got 3 days to delete that or we're going to delete your account and all 13 terabytes of data. When we released that movie, it was friend to friend. We were not able to do anything in public. And this was the censorship that reigned through that whole period.
What we now have is an excellent business system if your objective is to extract profit from the human body. And that's the truth about the takeover of medicine in America. It was created from the outset to extract profit from the simple act of existing in America. More food, more drugs, more visits to the specialist, more visits to the operating room. A chronically ill nation, a nation that is ill at the metabolic level, at the cellular level, is a successful outcome. This is not a healthcare system in the process of failing. This is a medical industry in the process of succeeding.
Eisenhower, when he left office, said, beware the military-industrial complex, because it was a war machine that fed off of wars, that was economically driven. And he was a general. He saw it. Now we have a medical industrial complex and we have a food and ag industrial complex. Whether it's pernicious, deliberate, on purpose or not, doesn't matter. We got here. Now some of it was just inadvertent by accident. You know, after World War II, we needed to feed a growing world population. We thought it would be great to industrialize agriculture. We took the factories that were making bombs and made fertilizer. We took the factories that were making bioweapons and chemical weapons and made pesticides.
In 2021, my mom was taking a hike, had a pain in her stomach, and she went in to get a scan. The next day, she got a text from Stanford Hospital where she learned she had stage 4 pancreatic cancer. We rushed to her side at Stanford Hospital, and the oncologist said this was unlucky. And seeing what I saw in lobbying, learning from my sister, what we realized is that my mom's cancer was not unlucky. Right now, we have the highest cancer rates in the United States than any time in US history. Out of 212 countries that gather data, the United States is dead last. We have the worst cancer rates of any country, developed or developing, in the world. Cancer rates are going up because of all these other conditions, these metabolic conditions. The fact that my mom was on 5 other comorbidity medications. She was on the statin for cholesterol. She was on the metformin for high blood sugar. She was on the ACE inhibitor for high blood pressure. For 40 years, she was racking up these prescriptions and the doctors were ignoring the root cause. It's a lie that her cancer was unlucky. We're ignoring the root cause in America, and we're becoming the sickest country in the world because we're waiting for people to get sick and then drugging them. We're waiting for people to get sick and then doing procedures. We're not solving the root cause.
When I withdrew from the presidential race, I did a speech in the morning, and in that speech I talked about my relationship with the Democratic Party, and I talked about the health of kids and the food and what was happening to our children. I didn't know what I was going to say. You know, those words just came out of my mouth. Make America healthy again. Gonna make America healthy again.
Make America healthy again. These 4 words are changing the course of American history, only if we use them. For me, Maha is much more than a slogan. Today, I want to make it a sledgehammer. Coming up in just moments, you're going to see how the medical industrial complex is stealing the lives of real people, including millions of children, and it's happening right now. We call this next chapter Hijacked, because there's no other way to describe what Big Pharma has done to the people you're about to see, and what they may be doing to you or a loved one right now.
When are people finally going to wake up and state that the emperor has no clothes? We all will be sick. We all will need medical attention. Until people make a stand, nothing's going to change. What's funny is after being out of the business for so long, I now realize that the docs that were rep friendly and love the reps coming in, I don't know if I'd go see them. I have a new respect for those doctors that didn't want drug reps in their office. You got to think these guys have 4-year degrees, and it could be in public relations or in media or whatever, but they're not scientists. And they're going out there and they're given these 3-week crash courses in these drugs, and they're told exactly verbatim what to say. And you're persuading doctors to make decisions about patient care. The drug reps do not educate physicians. They do nothing but muck up the works, because that drug company is not satisfied with a drug that sells 900 million. They want it over $1 billion. And it's always about more money.
What was it that first alerted you that there was an issue going on?
The company was selling drugs off-label to children, and the drug was indicated for 18 and above. And so I became a whistleblower before I even knew what a whistleblower was. And that was by asking the wrong question. And the question was, hey, is this legal?
Typically, whistleblowers are thought of as
snitches or rats. So there's this mentality that whistleblowers are bad people. But from what we're finding is it's quite the opposite. These are people that are very concerned about a problem or an injustice that they're seeing. They are putting themselves at tremendous risk to try to solve it. They say, hey, am I really hearing what you're asking me to do? Are you really expecting me to do this?
That was the beginning of the end for me. That's where all of a sudden I get demoted. You get labeled a troublemaker and they want to show you the door. I was finally terminated. I had to move back into my parents' house at 42 years old with my son. I couldn't get a job. I couldn't even get an interview. I was being shunned by everyone I grew up with, even by my own family. It was pretty tough, and for several years. And then we started to see some light. There was an announcement of a pending settlement. Then it took about another year. Then the case finally settled.
The Justice Department and our law enforcement partners have reached an historic $3 billion resolution with the pharmaceutical manufacturer GlaxoSmithKline.
GSK's sales force bribed physicians to prescribe GSK products using every imaginable form of high-priced entertainment.
It was an 11-year ordeal.
11 years.
11 years.
Do you think there were unnecessary deaths because these drugs were being prescribed
off-label?
Off-label.
Absolutely. No question in my mind at all.
Study 329 was created by a pharmaceutical company that made the drug Paxil. And the purpose of this study was to show that this drug was an effective and safe drug to treat children and adolescents with depression. The problem is that they found that that was not the case. The study revealed that their emotional stability deteriorated and their suicide ideation and risk tripled. They said, well, these findings are really inconsistent with what we want this study to say. So we're going to omit the parts that are not in favor of this drug being used to treat children. And only the good parts that supported the purpose of this study were chosen to be published. Some of the children that were dropping out because of ideation of suicide, they were labeled as non-compliant, rather than being truly reported as a side effect that would eventually have proven this drug to be a bad choice. These facts that were not accurate and cherry-picked were published in the most respected journal of medicine.
I can't tell you how many times through the years I had an oh my God moment when I realized that there was another layer to this.
You were a whistleblower and took such huge risks. The enormity of what you uncovered and discovered and then reported upon was mind-boggling.
I first encountered the issues that led to my crusade, if you will, when I was working as an investigator, a fraud investigator for the state of Pennsylvania, Office of Inspector General. I discovered that the Johnson & Johnson company was creating a drug protocol that would favor their drug Risperdal to expand the number of uses. The entire marketing process of the drug, from clinical trial through academic reporting, through the FDA and approval process, it was all based on fraudulent or manipulated material. They removed me from lead investigator.
Did they tell you why they removed you?
That I was too focused on the big picture, that I was too focused on
You were too focused on what you were doing.
Yeah. I was told drug companies write checks to both sides of the aisle. Back off. They wanted to maintain a deliberate ignorance of what was going on because their jobs depended on the political people who were being supported by the industry. I remember sit back like this and say, you win. I have 3 generations count on me. You win. I have to have my job. In the back of my mind, I'm thinking, son of a bitch, you're going down. I made my decision at that moment to become a whistleblower. We conducted 140 depositions all over the country. Our database of discovery documents rose to nearly 1 million documents, 10 million pages. The combined hours put in between the Attorney General and my attorneys exceeded 100,000 hours over a period of 6 years. We finally got them to trial in January 2012. For 10 years, it hijacked my life. Johnson & Johnson caved in and settled after 6 days of prosecution testimony. We were destroying them. We were laying out just an incredible story of deceit and corruption that permeated the entire drug development and marketing process. were times that I questioned whether I have the strength to keep going or whether or not I would succeed, but there was never, ever a time when I questioned whether I did the right thing.
This is not for the light of heart. You can't think, okay, I'm going to blow the whistle, I'm going to be a multimillionaire. The odds are 95% of you will not get a nickel. You will destroy your career and you'll end up with nothing. You will have the respect of no one. You will be a pariah. You'll be thought of as being crazy. They bury you.
If I'd have done what they wanted me to do and shoved that all aside, I would have been just like them.
One of our whistleblowers repeatedly tried to confront the issue internally. He brought samples of what he viewed as clear evidence of the fraud, writing sheets that were actually numbers were crossed out and say, this is what's going on, this is what we're being directed to do. Part of the explanation was the words business decision.
Johnson & Johnson in total, I think, paid out almost $3 billion, but it was for a drug they made $44 billion on.
Right, so it's the cost of doing business.
Exactly.
I know that you're handling a case that does have to do with a very large drug company.
This is the case that we have brought on behalf of 2 whistleblowers who used to work at Merck. These 2 individuals were scientists who worked in the vaccine research division. They were testing the efficacy of the mumps vaccine. They weren't getting the efficacy for which they were originally given approval. Our clients are saying they found that the vaccine was not working as well as it was originally. Our allegations aren't just about what they've eyewitnessed, but also what they were told by senior executives, that it was important for Merck to maintain that original efficacy, that very high number, so that it can continue to be licensed in the United States to sell the vaccine. Our clients were directed to falsify the data on the testing. If this is all true, like we believe it is, then there's a real issue of transparency that's at issue here. And if one of the major vaccine manufacturers in this country, in the world, is not being forthright with efficacy, then this is something that needs to come forward.
This isn't a couple of guys in a smoke-filled room making a plot. This is everywhere.
Young people are struggling more than ever, I think, with the numbers of kids getting anxiety disorder diagnoses, suicidal feelings, suicide attempts, girls especially.
I was personally harmed by psychiatric drugs. I didn't even know feeling like this was humanly possible. It felt like I was being hijacked by these chemicals, and I would tell my doctor, you know, I don't feel well, but I didn't really have the language to describe it because I was so young. And he said to me, you know, that's not true, that can't happen, it's not possible, this is just your underlying OCD, anxiety, it's getting worse. It just proves that you need to be on medication. So I felt so betrayed. I was like, you don't understand what's happening in my body. This is not anxiety or OCD. I'm like losing my mind. Something's not right. I'm in the worst pain I've ever been in.
These drugs are harmful. Nobody should be taking these drugs. And they are associated with acts of violence against oneself and against others. I've been involved in the cases. I've done the consultations. I've met the clients right in front of me who one day were not on the drug, and 1 week later were talking about wanting to die, who were never suicidal before.
Our culture right now has almost romanticized the diagnostic framework that of course they're going to gravitate towards, oh, I have this diagnosis or this diagnosis or this diagnosis or all three, I'm on this med and this med. That phenomenon was just taking off with me. I was, as an elder millennial, growing up in the 90s, I was the beginning of that. I can't imagine what it would be like to be a sensitive, struggling, lost teenager now with the internet and social media and this constant bombardment of messaging telling you that something's wrong with you if you feel pain. And we talk about a mental health crisis in our culture. I think that the medicalized, pharmaceuticalized approaches that have taken this monolithic status in our culture are actually fueling the problem.
Vincent Felitti came up with the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study. And the more adverse experiences you had as a child, the more you used the emergency room, the more drugs you were on, and the earlier your death. So I talked to one of my friends, a doctor at Kaiser, and I said, so are you learning this? It says, Kaiser, this is the heart of the whole problem, the adverse childhood experiences. She goes, no. What we're taught is give an SSRI, give Zoloft, give Paxil, give whatever.
I was pulled to work at a children's psychiatric hospital. I was 21 years old. Working at that children's psychiatric hospital was my first exposure to just the understanding of the psychiatric industry, even the mental health industry at all. I was working on a unit with kids as young as 4 or 5 years old, as old as 9 or 10. So you can imagine who's going to be admitted to a children's psychiatric hospital at the age of 5. I was exposed to how the psychiatric industry responded to those kids. It was rare to see any kid placed on any less than 3 drugs. This was in 1999 when I started working there. So it's at the height of the era of the brain, of trying to identify quote-unquote mental illness as a brain disorder. So my exposure to that was a wake-up call. And I saw these young kids deteriorate there because what was treatment was sedation. I saw kids be sedated to the fact that their life was drowned out of them. I mean, they were sedated to 18 hours of sleep. So let's consider the implications of this. When you're in an environment that is oppressive, emotions are signals for us. And that environment does not necessarily have to be, abusive. It could also be one in which we're just in a relationship that's unfulfilling. We could have exposure to poisonous foods. We can be completely disconnected from nature and living in screens. The resulting effect that we have internally should be aversive, because that's what it's used to get us back on our path, to correct and solve the problems that are in front of us. If it's an abusive environment, we have to get to safety. If we're putting poison into our bodies, it's to direct us towards health. If we're in an unloving and unfulfilling relationship, it's either to try to face that and create that in our relationship or to leave. If we're in a profession or a job that is off our soul's purpose or mission, all those internal emotions and experiences are designed just for that. Get back on your path.
Last year, there was a big movement where the health department wanted to have them reconsider how many prescriptions were made with antidepressants with kids, because it's a big problem. A lot of kids just aren't getting outside and rolling around and playing like we used to. They're sitting on a tablet all day. I started to do my own research and started to dig into SSRIs, and what I found is that there's an area of the brain, and that area of the brain is called the locus coeruleus, and in Latin that means blue spot. And that blue spot is where short-term memory is stored, and then when we go to sleep, that short-term memory is transferred to long-term memory. And think about how important that is for a child that is learning and exploring the world, and then they have to integrate those experiences that they've had that day with their long-term memory banks. And SSRIs totally prevent that from happening. It's called memory consolidation. Think about how dangerous that is with kids, to basically prevent them from integrating their experiences. And this is one of the reasons that it potentiates suicide with, a certain subset of kids.
Most kids, teenagers, are spending 3.5 hours on social media a day, sometimes up to 5 hours. If we look at young girls, they're looking at celebrities who have, seemingly, superior bodies, because so much of it is doctored. They have better lives than them, and it just can create a tremendous amount of anxiety. And so they're not hanging out with their friends or connecting with people in real life or exercising or sleeping or being bored. And it's like, if you delete 3.5 hours from a kid's life where they're doing all of those things, how could that not be a serious problem? How could that not lead to a lack of emotional development and social development? I mean, the school system is not really designed in a way to be engaging. If you have a kid who's not paying attention in class, it's like, well, maybe he has this thing, ADHD, and maybe he needs to be on stimulants. They're trying to blame the kid, essentially, and blame the kid's brain rather than looking at the environment they're in. Because usually there's something that the kid is really into, and if they find that, they can sit still and they can focus on it.
When I was in the 2nd grade, the teacher called out my mom to say that I basically was having trouble focusing in class. I was looking out the window, my handwriting was sloppy. So I went to go meet with the doctor, and they diagnosed me as ADHD. And from there, that just led to more and more prescriptions. I ended up on antidepressants, antipsychotics. In high school, being on a mixture of antidepressants and benzodiazepines, it was really hard for me to get out of bed in the mornings. I was constantly sleeping, constantly napping, like I just couldn't stay up. I would get in trouble for falling asleep in class. When I would tell my doctor, like, I think it's from the medicine, he would just be like, no, like he would either switch it with another medication or raise my dose, and he would just tell my parents, you know, this is just her underlying condition. She has a mental illness. She needs these drugs to fix her chemical imbalance. She's gonna need to be on them for her whole life. Every adverse effect from the drug was blamed on me somehow. And he was our family doctor. He saw everyone in our family. That was kind of the culture, like everyone, my parents, my brother, my sister, they were all on psychiatric drugs. After college, after I had been on these drugs basically my whole life, all while my brain was developing, he took me off following the medical standard guidelines that doctors are told to follow, which is fast and only over a couple weeks. But I had been on these drugs my whole life. So what followed was a catastrophic neurological injury that stole years of my life from me. My brain was on fire, it was burning, I was bedridden, I lost 20 pounds, I had complete rage and paranoia and looping intrusive thoughts, and I didn't understand what was happening. I knew something wasn't right. I had done research, so I saw online that, this is called protracted withdrawal from antidepressants, and I told him that, and he would tell my parents, this is her underlying disorder, she needs to be medicated. And I was bedridden for about 3 years, really just housebound. I couldn't drive, I couldn't hang out with friends, I couldn't do anything. I was just catatonic, shut off. I couldn't feel joy, pleasure. I used to have a very fast, witty paced mind. I was funny, silly, outgoing. I loved life, but that was all stolen from me from these medications.
There are times where I found Danny shaking on the floor. Once I thought it was a seizure, but because she was breathing, I knew it wasn't a seizure, but she was shaking uncontrollably. I've called ambulances, I've taken her there. We're relying on a school teacher or a counselor to weigh in on decisions that are going to affect our kid's life. But I'm the one holding her hand and trying to get her through this and explain to people what we think is going on. And I listen to the doctors and I believe them and all these other people saying that she needs the med. So I live with a lot of guilt too.
And now basically to this day, I am stuck on the medication, the antidepressant. I'm not able to come off. I have tried, and every time I do, it puts me into catastrophic withdrawals that injure me. There's no studies looking at how we take people off these drugs, so I really don't know. Sometimes I like to say I am the long-term study they failed to do, and this is what happens, and I feel very trapped.
It's a really big decision to start a psychiatric drug or to stop a psychiatric drug. And our culture today tends to be a little bit cavalier about those decisions and the costs of that approach. I was diagnosed with ADHD. I sort of grew up with that in my mind. It sort of helped me make sense of who I was and why the adults around me in particular reacted to me in the ways that they did. But my parents, they were not interested in putting me on a drug for which there was not a whole lot of evidence for safety at that point. And so they left that decision to me, and I made that decision myself at the age of 17, and that's when I started 5 milligrams twice a day, Ritalin. I went from a C student to an A student basically overnight. The good part of my relationship with psychiatric drugs lasted about 3 or 4 years. And then there got to be sort of a neutral period where it was unclear if the benefits were sort of trending versus the harms in the right direction. And that was around the time that I started getting additional prescriptions, benzodiazepine, as needed, that was added to my existing stimulant prescription. And from there, antidepressants, gabapentinoids, sleep drugs came into the frame at some point. And, by my mid to late 20s, I'm walking out of the psychiatrist's office with sort of a sheaf of prescriptions. And ultimately, by the time I got to age 30, I found myself, whatever benefits I had originally found, I was now seeking them more desperately than ever.
When I was told that I was bipolar as a 14-year-old girl who was angry and really grieving this recognition, this void of meaning in my life, I knew that this was absurd. I knew that there was nothing wrong with me. What was wrong was this environment that I was in and all these pressures and expectations that I felt. It was one of those towns where everything looked perfect and beautiful and everyone was successful, and I was little. I didn't have a solid sense of myself. And so I tried my best to resist the meds, and I hid them, and I tried not to take them whenever I could. And I managed to not take meds for most of high school. But by the time I got to college and I ended up staying stuck in the performance game this whole time with my good grades and my good, squash playing and all these things on paper, that I ended up getting into Harvard, and something in me said, maybe I'm wrong about this whole fake self thing, and I'll get to Harvard, this pinnacle of achievement that I've worked so hard for, and I'll finally feel okay in my skin. And when I got there, of course, nothing changed. I still felt empty and lost and overwhelmed by my pain, this emotional pain in me that was just driving me to despair and anger, that I really spun out, and I started doing drugs and getting myself into all kinds of trouble and not sleeping and not doing my work. And so I went back to psychiatry at that point as an 18-year-old, just so desperate to understand why I felt the way that I felt and what to do about it to stop it. I just was yearning for relief. I really found a great sense of hope in those early months. And of course, in this idea that I could take these pills every morning, every night, and they'd start to work their magic eventually, and I wouldn't want to die anymore. And that hope and that sense of optimism was pretty fleeting. And before long, I wasn't sleeping well, and so a sleeping aid was added, and then I couldn't stay awake during the day, and so an anti-narcoleptic drug was added, and then, I was a little erratic, so another mood stabilizer was added. Just this polypharmacy and a cascade of medications unfolded. And by the time I was 25, and I'd fallen into such a state of just despair and dysfunction, my doctor at the time told me, unfortunately, you have treatment-resistant bipolar disorder. And there I was, having spent all these years of my life so invested in my treatment, seeing the top doctors at Harvard Medical School, and I'm going to the top private psychiatric institutions in the Northeast, and believing so deeply that these doctors were gonna help me, these pills were gonna help me. And now you're telling me my illness is resisting all this treatment? And that story to me just robbed me of any hope I had left. And suicide became the only logical conclusion I could draw for my life, because I couldn't handle going on any longer with this treatment-resistant, mentally ill life of despair and dysfunction, and being locked up on psych wards, and being in outpatient programs and partial hospital programs and group therapy and one-on-one therapy and 3 meds, 4 meds, 5 meds. What was the end game there? I couldn't just do that for the rest of my life, or I could end that life. And so I tried to kill myself at age 25. And I often say to this day, that decision that I made, I have a deep sense of respect for it, because given the story that I had been taught to believe about myself by the American mental health industry, it was a very logical conclusion to draw. The problem was I'd been taught a false story. And it took me another couple of years to wake up to that. It's a miracle that I'm here.
It's a system, and I always say healthcare is a big business. We are not patients, we are customers. And we have to remember that we are customers, and The companies are beholden, not to you and I, they're beholden to their shareholders. My husband had just started his dream job with a startup company in February of 2003 and was having trouble sleeping. So he went to his doctor, his general practitioner, the doctor, I always call Woody the Humpty Dumpty, because the doctors always fixed him. He was a big athlete. And so he told him he wasn't sleeping, and they gave him a 3-week sample pack of an antidepressant and told him it would take the edge off and help him sleep. The doctor said, you got to give it 4 to 6 weeks to kick in, the drug. And I was out of town, and I hadn't heard from Woody on August 6th, Tuesday morning. Called him, didn't hear all day, and I kept getting a little bit more nervous. And finally, by the end of the day, I'm like, hey, call my dad, and I go, Dad, will you do me a favor? Woody's been having trouble sleeping. Would you go and check on him? Because maybe he hit his head. 9 o'clock at night, and my phone rings, and it's my dad, and he's like, it's bad, it's bad. And I go, what do you mean it's bad? And he's like, he's dead. I'm like, what? How do you know? Like, what do you mean he's dead? He's like, he's hanging. And literally in that 1 second, my entire life exploded because Woody had no history of depression. So it made no sense. I'm like, what? We just booked our 10-year anniversary trip. We're talking about having kids. We were going, just booked our trip to go to Hawaii with his parents. And Woody loved life. Like, it literally made no sense. And I'll never forget, the coroner called me and said, was Woody taking any medication? The only medication he was taking was Zoloft. And she said, we're gonna take it with us. It might have something to do with his death. Of course, that meant nothing to me at that moment, right? And then that same day that Woody was found, the front page of our newspaper had an article that said the UK finds link between antidepressants and suicide. Woody left no note. And literally, it's almost like as if that was his note. Because that night, as my life fell apart, my brother-in-law went home and Googled Zoloft and suicide, which of course, I didn't even know it was an antidepressant. I knew nothing about these drugs. And learned that the FDA had hearings in 1991 on the emergence of violence and suicide with Prozac. And there were all these families that came forward talking about their experiences. And the advisory board members on that committee, they said, nope, we don't see anything. The FDA agreed. They didn't put any warning on. When we saw that 1991 hearing, that there were no warnings, that really became what I call the battle for Woody. And started going out to DC almost immediately after, probably 6-8 weeks after Woody died. Met with the FDA officials thinking they would care. You know, and then met with our members of Congress. And at this time, we didn't realize that there were all these other families, like little kids, that were being put on antidepressants that were taking their lives. We eventually got black box warnings added in 2004. A black box warning is the most serious of FDA warnings. It basically means that they found that there could be death associated with it. With black box warnings, your doctors should be telling you that there are warnings with these drugs. And to get a warning put on a drug, that doesn't just happen lightly. And a lot of times warnings get added once there's been a lot of harms in the real world. They don't necessarily come onto the market with those warnings. To think that the FDA had hearings, they knew about this in '91 when it was just Prozac. So now we fast forward and we have Paxil, we have Zoloft, and we have it approved for kids. So that was like the most astonishing thing for me is like, you guys knew and did nothing. And meanwhile, I met so many families, like little 12-year-old that were hanging, and they got it for test anxiety. And a lot of things that people were getting these antidepressants for were things like my husband got, which was for not sleeping. It wasn't for depression.
I can look at who I was before Prozac. I can look at who I was on Prozac. And they were very, very different people. You are unaware of the change to yourself. Those around you may be able to see it, but if they mention it to you, you'll deny it because you don't know, because you're under the spell. At the age of 20, I suffered a severe vaccine injury. That took me offline. I took the Gardasil vaccine at the advice of my doctor. There was no informed consent. I was simply told, this is a vaccine that you need that will prevent you from getting cancer. I simply trusted my doctor. And so I took the shot. It's a series of 3. By the time that I took the 3rd shot, I could no longer drive. I could not stand up. I was sleeping up to 18 hours a day. Could barely function. And as I started to improve a little bit, and I could eventually walk short distances, I still couldn't stand still. So I couldn't go to a concert. I couldn't ride a train. I couldn't go anywhere where if I fell down, I would not fall flat, because that was a death sentence. And eventually a cardiologist told me, I'd like to put you on a drug. It's been around for 30 years, really good safety profile, no side effects, no dependency, it's safe. And I believed him, and I'd never heard of the drug before. So he put me on Prozac. And that was the beginning of a very dark period in my life. Prozac's an SSRI. And I wasn't depressed. I wasn't anxious, which would be the normal reasons to put me on this, which I guess is one of the reasons I didn't think to ask questions. But what began to transpire in my life after that was very dark. Within months, I lost my faith. It was just gone. I lost my sense of empathy for other people. I lost all empathy for the man I was married to. And I left. And I left in a messy way and in a way that hurt him. And I would never have done that before Prozac. But on Prozac, my ability to connect to other people, my ability to connect to God, and my ability to connect in general was just gone. I was on that drug for a very long time. I began in January of 2021 to taper. 2 weeks later, my mom got sick. 6 weeks later, she was diagnosed with an aggressive stage 4 terminal cancer. It was a rough year. I watched my emotions return and begin to spiral because I'd had 13 years of not having to deal with them, not having to live with them. Eventually, I developed something called akathisia. Akathisia is something that every person should know about before they ever go on an SSRI. It is one of the conditions most closely associated with suicide, and having been through it, I know why. The only way I can describe akathisia to somebody is imagine your hand has been chained to a red-hot stove and you can't move it. And someone can tell you in 5 minutes, we'll unchain your hand and you can take it off the stove. But that's not going to help you because that 5 minutes is an eternity. But now imagine instead of your hand, it's your brain. Your brain is chained to a red-hot stove. Clothes on your skin, you want to rip them off. Your hair touching you, you want to pull it out. Every sound around you is unbearable. Interacting with other human beings can be completely impossible. There is no peace, there is no stillness, there's nothing but agitation and panic, and it doesn't stop, and you don't know when it will stop. And your mind will tell you it's here forever. It could be a week, it could be 5 weeks, it could be 5 months, it could be forever. You don't know, and no one can tell you how long it will be. And every 30 seconds, you have to tell yourself, don't kill yourself, don't kill yourself, don't kill yourself. I was unable to explain to anyone most of the time what I was going through because I lost words. I could barely speak to convey anything at all because I was so busy inside just continuing to exist moment by moment by moment. And so few people talk about this. So few people talk about akathisia. But it's absolutely horrific, and far too many people coming off these drugs experience it. Akathisia isn't just an effect of withdrawing from these drugs. It can be the effect of being on them too. It is known that for some people, one of the effects of being on an SSRI or ramping onto one is to develop akathisia. So why would we ever be giving these to somebody without telling them, fully informing them, that this most excruciating, debilitating, crippling condition associated with high rates of suicide is a possibility? If you knew that you were in a state of sadness and worry, but there were other ways you could manage that, Or you can go on this substance that will narrow you into this narrow band of experience, numbing both joy and sadness. That ran a very real risk of putting you into a mental state so agitated and so horrifying that many people in it commit suicide. Who would choose that? And that's probably why nobody's told. Tapering off these drugs usually starts easy. The beginning of the taper isn't hard because there's enough of the drug still in your body. It's the end of the taper that is hard, as there is less and less and less of the drug in your system. So for me, it was that last 5 to 10% of the drug coming off it that got bad. Now, if I were seeing one of the incredible doctors who helps people, they would have told me, bump right back up the dose, but I didn't know that. I didn't have anyone that I trusted to help me. So I kept on at that lower dose, and that is why akathisia, one of the reasons it lasted so long for me. So it went on for about 5 months, and when it finally ended, over a period of a week or two, I remember suddenly one day being able to look out the window and hear birds and just be. And that was the first moment I realized, I'm surfacing again. I'm going to come out of this.
All the mistakes I made and the lessons I learned about what slow tapering actually does look like, which for many, many people requires years, not weeks, not months, years to successfully get off of these drugs without creating, this total turmoil of withdrawal. I knew I needed to take everything I'd learned and try to turn it into something that could help other people. And it was through that process as well that I think I found my way to a new story about what my suffering meant. It's something, I think I've made peace with letting go of feeling like I need to reach. What I can say about what my life looks like today is that I'm the same sensitive, intense woman that girl that got psychiatrized because of her anger and her intense emotional pain. It's still me. The main difference is that I'm not afraid of it. I'm not afraid of it. And I feel pain every day. I feel tears welling up right now in me. There's a lot of pain to feel, but I'm not afraid of it. And I don't think it's a problem that I need to fix. It's something I need to feel. My life looks totally different than it did when I was a professional psychiatric patient, but I'm still the same me. I think a lot of people hear my story and just assume the end of it is something that's happy and everything's great now. And no, life is hard and it's meant to be hard. And the purpose of being alive is not the absence of suffering. It's feeling connected to a sense of meaning and purpose in the pain that you're feeling. I just coexist with these dark parts of myself and focus instead on my kids and my work and my husband and my life and all the meaning that there is to be made in it.
It's funny, I look back at all that has been accomplished. If you actually knew who I was before this, I wouldn't take anything like this on, right? I remember Woody, before he died, he'd be like trying to get 2 cell phone towers changed in our neighborhood. They were gonna put 2, and he wanted me to go get the neighbors to sign a petition, and then he would go to city council, and I'm like, ugh. Woody, you're never gonna win. You're up against 2 cell phone towers and the city council. And he said something to me, he goes, I would rather try like hell and lose than do nothing at all. So then fast forward, it's almost like when he died, he passed the baton on to me and I became a whole different person. And then all these years later, that committee that in 1991, the FDA Psychopharmacologic Drugs Advisory Committee, that did not represent the public, right? There was no voice on there. I actually earned a position sitting on the FDA Psychopharmacologic Drugs Advisory Committee as the consumer representative representing the public. And so I have spent the last 9 years, 3 consecutive terms, sitting on that committee, and it's a very eye-opening opportunity to see how drugs actually come onto the market. Everything's using fast-tracking mechanisms right now, and knowing that the drug companies control the data, they control every aspect of it. The FDA, I've come to see that harms are not ever really addressed at the time of approval, And at these meetings, it's always assumed when there's all these new drugs coming on the market, especially in the psychiatric area, that harms are going to be picked up in the real world, right? And so you start looking at how clinical trials and how they're designed. And so I get to ask these questions of the drug companies, and I get to ask questions of the FDA, and I get to vote no. And, or vote yes, or if I'm for it. But obviously the whole point of using the FDA, it's a hurdle to get a product on the market. And then once the product's on the market, they can go and promote it any way they want, the drug companies, right? And being somebody who's spent their entire career in advertising and marketing, I'm like, oh, no, this is just a game to get the drug on the market. But the real world is where the harms and what's going to happen, and this is where we have to be concerned with. So I would always ask questions about marketing and make sure, like, how are you going to make sure that this drug is going to be promoted right? Like, how are we going to watch the harms? And you could see people on the advisory committee looking at me because they're, they're academic researchers or they're epidemiologists, and they're talking about they're talking about the p-values and things like that. And I'm like, it's about the marketing out there. It's why I do the work I do today, because we think, the public thinks, our doctors think the FDA is doing their job. And we need to have a voice and realize that the system is not really out there protecting us.
If the Maha movement was to open its arms to say, we see you all, we see all of you people from all over the world who have for decades been tirelessly, trying to support one another to get off these medications, to advocate for psychiatric drug policy reform, to support one another in mutual aid communities with a warm invitation, it could dramatically expand the Maha community very fast. And we are so eager to partner with Maha in helping to make this happen.
Children as young as 4 years old on 3 psychiatric drugs. Can you imagine this? Earlier today, my friend Patrick Gentempo remarked that we do not have a healthcare system in the process of failing, but rather a medical industry in the process of succeeding. This is what success looks like, and the price of that success is our bodies and minds. Over the next 8 days, we're going to give you access to the entire film, Maha Uncensored, all 16 chapters, completely free of charge. You're going to get Maha-informed truths about everything from how you eat, to the way you drain toxins, to breakthroughs in Lyme and thyroid issues, to the truth about GLP-1s, peptides, stem cells, even previously incurable diseases like cancer and diabetes. We've got incredible appearances coming up as well. Dr. Peter McCullough, Dave Asprey, J.J. Virgin, Callie Means, and many more, including, of course, Bobby himself. I want to ask you to be a part of this too. All you need to do is share this film. A single social media post will do. Just send them to mahamovie.com. If you're not on social media, that's perfectly fine. Tell a fellow mom or dad, tell your children, share it with your church, text a friend. If you can tell just 3 people, that will make all the difference in getting our movie and our mission into the right hands. Bobby has given us this incredible tool in Maha. Let's not waste it. Tomorrow, we're going to expose a shadowy player at the heart of our medical system that almost no one has heard of. It's not an insurance company or a drug company or a medical association, but it is the secret reason why our healthcare is so expensive, why our country is awash in opiates and SSRIs, and much more. In all my years as a filmmaker, I've rarely stumbled upon a story like this before. And this is just day 1 of Maha Uncensored. I'll see you tomorrow.